Hello, everyone. Welcome to Streaming Alchemy. I'm John Mahoney, and on today's show, we're going to be taking a look at how you can display dynamic polling data using vMix with some scripting, some masks, some XML, and a few other things thrown in. But before we get to that, I'd like to invite everyone, please, if you would like to comment, have any questions, have any things you want to share that are related to streaming, video production, please just post them in the comments and we'll get you up on air with us. The other thing is, if you'd like to join us live here in the studio, we have a URL for that. Just that should also be posted in the show notes. So if you click on that, you should be able to have somebody here in the studio get you on air. Okay, so first, as we jump in, I just want to recognize, so Rudy just put up a comment saying, good evening, and curious as always, Rudy, it is always good to see you here. So thank you for joining us again tonight. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to show. One of the things we wanted to do was we wanted to create results for polling information that use little bar charts. And as we started to dig into this, there was no obvious way to us to create that using sort of traditional scripting or shortcuts. There's no way to manipulate the scale or size of boxes inside of GT Title Designer directly. And you can't do things with layers that affect scale through scripting. So we were looking at this saying, okay, how could we do that? And I think we came up with a fairly interesting way. But as we get to that, let me show you exactly the sort of setup that I want to replicate here and that we'll be going through in the scripting that we do. So if we take this, we set up this fake poll that had sort of an A choice and a B choice. And it would be like, which music style is better? It doesn't mean it's your favorite. It's just if you looked at the two, which one would you prefer? And so we just set this up as a basic model for the type of result we wanted. And we wanted to do something where I could continue to select other polling information. And this information is just coming out of XML. And we dynamically change the charts and the images and the text that's on the screen to line up with the data that we're reading from the XML stream. So this is what we were looking at accomplishing. So the way we do this is that we take and read this XML data. We extract information from that because it has the question, it has what were the two options for responses, it has the percents that went to each of those responses, sort of the A response and the B response, and it has links to the file names that are the images that we used at the start of those graphs to display everything. But the way we need it to do the graphs is the first thing that I'm going to touch on here. But actually, before I do that, let me catch up. There were a few more people that have commented here. So this is, let's see, we have Battle for Freedom. So Battle for Freedom is talking about DaVinci Resolve 18. I love DaVinci Resolve. It has incredible capabilities, a lot of AI built into it now. And if I were to pick an editor for new people to attack first, DaVinci Resolve would be it. It's also cross-platform because Mac, it's PC, so it gives you a lot of flexibility in that. So thank you, Battle for Freedom. And we also have Thomas Rattay. Hopefully I'm saying your name right. So Thomas is coming to us from Leverkusen, Germany. So thank you, Thomas, for joining us here. Okay, so I'm going to jump now into the vMix session and talk a little bit about how we set this up. So when we thought about pulling graphs, like bar graphs together, what we recognized is that we could do something that was built around sort of decomposing the bar graph into blocks of 10 and then blocks of 1. So what I mean by that is, let me jump over here and sort of show this. I wanted to do something where I could assemble a set of graphic images. So going from a block that's 10% wide and down to blocks that are just 1% wide. So basically, and stack these together based on the numbers. So in this case, if I'm looking at, say, 73, I would display back to back 7 bars that are the full width, and then I'd go and grab this bar, which is only 3% wide, and add that to the end. And the way we did this is we set up a, let me see if I got this here. Yeah, so we did that. Let me do this over in the mass. So the way we set this up is we created layers. And because we have 10 layers, 10 layers gives us 100%. So when we looked at that, we said, okay, I could actually stack these images one after the other in a way that would be aligned with these, back to back, that we could align up to cover any percentage from 0 to 100%. And we use scripting then to go and fill in the bars. So this is the mask we use. I'll talk for a second why we're using masks. But the mask that we use this is for the 27%. So what we did is we went in, we filled in 2 bars of 10, 1 bar of 7 for the 27, and then we just shut off all of the other layers in vMix to get out 27. Now, why did we use the mask? That's the next piece to this. What we wanted to be able to do was not have to do this for all sort of different colors of potential bars that you may want to set up if you wanted to differentiate things. So what we actually end up doing is we create a mask for both the A response and the B response. So this one is 27 and this one is 73. What we then do, because the way masks work is it has to be a flattened image. So we send mask A out of mix 2, mask B out of mix 3, and then in the graphics we have here, we have a full bar that's red and a full bar that's blue. And when we go in here and do the color key, we are actually applying the mask to that, which cuts out the part of that full bar we don't want. So if I wanted to change the colors, I could do that by just putting a different color bar in here. If I wanted to do little images of like cars that I could set up to say, okay, this is how many cars were produced inside of the last quarter or something, I could just do little images of cars in this bar, and then this will just crop it wherever I want it. So a lot of flexibility in using the mask, and it creates something that can be visually more compelling than simply just putting these as pre-canned, like a red and a blue, inside these little 10 bar versus 1 bar segments and assembling that. So by doing this as the mask, that gave us a lot of flexibility. So where do we get the data to populate all this? So the way we're doing this is we are reading an XML file. So let me actually switch over so you can see. So I'm going to go over to the second monitor here and go through the XML a bit. So what we did is we set up an XML file that is the polling questions, and we blocked each question as sort of little segments in here. So inside each question, we have what was the question asked, what were the options for A and B, the percent for the responses for each one of those options, and then the name of the image that we used at the front of that. So, when we displayed each one of these, we had a indicator sort of iconic image for each one of those potential responses to make this correct. So we just have this, and we could grow this to any size we want it with as many questions. But more importantly, if we actually had a polling application, we would just pump this information in here, and this would give you a way to display that. So that will probably be things we'll do at a future show, but this is something that really takes the results and lets you render them. So that's the XML that we have set up for all this. And all we do is we let people select which polling question do you want to select the information for. And so in our script, we'll go to the correct polling question and pull all that data out. And then we run through the process of building the mask. And we also, as you can tell, have an overlay which displays. So if we switch back to the output over here on vMix, you can see we have an overlay, which is basically all the information around the question, the icons, the names of the titles of the responses, and the percentages that we had in here. So all that information is put on by an overlay. So at this point, what I think makes the most sense is we'll dive into the actual script and talk a bit about how all this comes together with what we did in vMix. But actually, before I get there, let me just see we have any other comments here. So Battle for Freedom came back and said insane and then brilliant. So it's probably a mix of insanity and brilliance in here somewhere. I'm not sure where on that spectrum we come in, but it will be somewhere in there. So thank you, Battle for Freedom. I appreciate that. So let's actually look at the code here now. So the first part, and I'm not going to go into enormous detail. There's a lot of comments in here, so it should be fairly straightforward to follow. But the entire first part is all the definitions we do up front. And as I mentioned, we do things by breaking into how many groups of 10 and then what's left over, the ones group. And that's how we assemble those masks for the bars. So that's all the information we keep for that. And all of this is really around what we need to do to store and manage that information. And the next thing, as usual, in this space right here, this is where we open up the XML associated with vMix so we can work with the different inputs and pull everything out. And the first thing we do after that, that's sort of everything that gets set up in here. So the first thing we do after that is we actually read the XML file. So we got to pull this information in because that's what everything else is based on. So we are doing this using standard file commands inside of Visual Basic Scripting. And so this just says, where is our folder located that contains the XML? And we create a document we can use for that. And we basically just open this up in read mode and read the file in. And that's what we're doing right here. We will take and read the file in with this file stream. And then we will go and we take each one of the questions and we pull those out as a node list. And we talked about that before. But this means that when I say I want question 3 or question 1 or question 5, whatever that is, I have the ability now to just index it in a list and go and pull the right data for that index list. And that's why we used a node list right here. So we load these questions in with the load file stream, and we select all the nodes that are labeled question. So don't have to go anywhere if you just look here. So when we came in here and we open this, we are basically pulling every one of these out and putting them into a list. So each one of these XML blocks. So that's what we have here at the end of this code. And as I mentioned, we're just assigning a dynamic value to say this is the question I want to work with. And so we just have to pull that out, and that is what we're doing right here. So the active question is basically the value inside of the vMix XML that's assigned to dynamic value 1. So we use shortcuts to set that dynamic value, and then in the scripting we pull that out, and that's how we select which polling question we want. So everything down here now, this is all about setting up space to read all that information in the XML. And so this is for the question asked, the options, all that. So when we go through that, set that all up to create the spaces, then we pull it all out. Again, this is just XML node list, and we're selecting nodes and pulling the inner text. So one at a time, we're pulling each of those fields out. And when we get to the bottom, the percentages are going to be stored as strings, and when we pull it from the XML node list. So we have another variable we use for that. This just converts them to integers, so we can use them either as strings or as numbers. And we're going to need to do a little math to calculate the numbers, but that's why we actually have to go and convert them to have them in two forms. For the string version, because we're going to display this, we just add a little percent on the back end. So when you saw on the charts that we did, we had the number with a percent after it. That's all we did that for. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take all that data we pulled out and we're going to assign it to elements inside GT Title Designer. And the way we stack this up at the end, let me see if we could just switch back to the vMix interface for a moment. So the way we have this set up here is that everything that we're getting with all these results, the background is all set up as one image. So that's sort of sitting up over here with the background. And then we just have an overlay on. So this overlay down here, which is overlay 1, we turn this on, and this is where we're populating all that information. So what we're writing over in the script is we're basically going in and identifying each one of these fields in the GT Title Designer file, where each layer, each text block, and each image is named, and we use that to populate. So if we switch back to the code over here again, so that's what we're doing here. So we're doing set text, which is what we do when we want to populate something in a title. And we are just pulling the information. What's the question text? And we're doing the assignment for whatever we have in the poll results. So this is a very straightforward way to fill in all that information. And then that's for all the text, which are really straightforward textual values. There are different things for images, which are set image. And so for that, again, we're just saying, where's the image that I'm using, the URL of the image. In this case, it's just the file name. And we put that into image A source, image B source. So for text, whatever you name that text item in GT Title Designer, you append .text. For images, you just append .source, and that's how you write things to it. So once we have that done, the whole overlay piece now is set, and all we have to do is do the work to draw the bars where we need to. And that's the next piece here. So the first part of all this is just finding what inputs we're using in vMix to hold mask A and mask B. So a lot of this stuff is around just taking and pulling that information out of the vMix XML to know what inputs we need to work with. And this is getting the input that's associated with that 10%, that full block. And then we have to figure out what we're going to use for the leftover amount, because that's going to be the other piece that we have to pull out. And we do that using a little bit of math here. So there's two constructs here, and that's this piece right here that we're going to talk about. So the first one is inside of the math library here, there's something called a floor function. And what that would do is when I do a calculation, and it could have like, 2.37 could be the result of the number from that calculation. What it will do is say, I just want to take that 0.37 and throw it away. And I just want to go to the floor, to the 2. And that means that even if it was 2.99, if it isn't 3, it goes down to 2. And so that's all this math function does, is give us that tens digit, no matter what the ones digit is. So, we looked at the chart over here, and it had like 27% and 73. So in this case, when we do for the 27%, this math floor is going to say divide 27 by 10, which will be 2.7 as the result, and just give me that 2. Throw away the 0.7. I don't care. And that is the number of blocks of 10 that I'll need to fill in. And then we do the same thing, but using a different function called the modulo function or mod function. And that does the exact opposite. That basically says, do this sort of division, but just give me the remainder. So I'm not interested in the uh, the the 2 in the 2.7. I'm interested in the 7 piece. So if I come back and say, okay, give me that remainder, it goes in twice and leaves 7 over. That's exactly what I want now. So give me that 7. So little funky math things. It's not something that, we run across all the time. But by calling this out, what I get now is what is the correct number of full blocks? And then what block do I take for that last block? Because it's going to be based on the name. We have bar dash 1 up to 9 for those partial blocks. So that's all this does. I go there, pull that out for option A and for option B. So we just do it for both of them together. And then to get the partial block, I just take the block prefix, which we defined earlier, which is bar dash, and I append the string version of that remainder piece. So that's just giving me the right input, name, and then again, I go back in the vMix stuff and find the number for that name and pull that out. So now I know the input numbers for both of those. Then I just go and I fill it in a loop. So for option A to display that bar chart, I loop around to say, okay, let's set each layer for the full blocks input up to the full block count. So I do that twice for 27. So it loops twice and layer 1 gets a full block, layer 2 gets a full block. Then I just go and say, okay, I turn those layers on so they become visible. And then I just go and say, now I just put the partial layer in the next one. So I go and say, okay, that next block is the image of that partial count. So the 7. So that's the image I put there. And then I just run through the rest of it and turn the visibility of those layers off. And that way, everything beyond that is blank. So I don't care what's in it. You're just seeing the layers that are involved in creating the mask. And I do that for A, and I do that for option B. And then I'm pretty much done. Everything here is set to the correct images. And again, I don't have to go through all this in detail. And this is where we turn the layers off for everything. So very straightforward way to do it. And it isn't the only way. As we sort of looked back at this, there are other ways we could have done this. And I'll probably do some of that on another show because I'd like to spend another show where we really focus in on things you could do directly in GT Title Designer and some of the advantages that would give us over the way we did this here. But definitely just a different way to think about creating something that's a dynamic chart. And a lot of flexibility. You could, like I said, you could use lots of different ways to do this with different images and other things. You could stack them as opposed to having them go linear. All of those things become options. And by doing these things as mask bound to that sort of image that you want to use, you can sort of play with size and scale pretty easily then when you composite that. Because all we've done in any of this, if I switch back to the vMix for a second here, all we've basically done here is we put this together as layers. So I have sort of my background result and bar A and bar B, which are the two bars that we masked. And I manipulated the sizes and all this to get them lined up exactly where I want it in here. So again, a lot of flexibility with the layout and how you want to do this when you put this all together. But that was really the entire model we did here. So let me see. I'll go back to comments. So we have another comment here from QStream TV. So this is Michael from Denmark. Michael, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate everybody that takes their Friday night and spends it with us. So I am definitely grateful for that. So Michael, thank you. And I know that's we have Thomas and we have Rudy, all of which are coming in from Europe. So definitely appreciate that. So that's everything I want to cover. So I will hang out in the post show and we can talk a bit about anything around here that you want. If you had any other questions, if you had any other thoughts for how we could have done this, because this This is definitely something that I may have missed something that's more directly doable in scripting, but I didn't see that when we were looking at this initially. So would definitely welcome uh, any thoughts that all of you might have around that. But with that being said, if you have any questions, get them in, and we'll kick off the post show with that. If you can't join us for the post show, thank you very much for being a part of this show. I appreciate it, and I would love to have you join us for the post show. But otherwise, we'll see you next week. Be back in a few. So hello everyone, welcome to the post show. So let me jump on here. So Battle for Freedom, he says Watson here in Indiana. So Watson, thank you for joining us here in the States. That's definitely appreciated. And QStream TV said, always great learning experience on your shows. QStream TV, I appreciate that. There's a lot of people that make these shows happen. So I am very grateful when people get something out of that. But this was a different kind of show because we first went into this, and when we were first looking at doing this as a topic, I said I remember that I have more flexibility to do stuff in GT Title Designer, and I wasn't exactly sure what in vMix 25 was changed, but definitely I knew there were some things, but it wasn't sizing and scaling; it was colors and things you could do. So that's why we started to think of how else could we do this. So QStream is asking, what would be the limits to the graphics you just showed us? So the limit is actually the resolution you could get. So in the model I have, you sort of limit it to ones, without creating an inordinate number of images to plug in. So that would be the biggest limitation there could be. Uh, that said, uh, when you think about anything that you're representing with charts, even if it's actual counts. So say I wanted to turn around and say, how many red jelly beans, how many black jelly beans we have, 87 jelly beans, and I have, 40 red. When you sort of sit there and do that, you could sit there and say that can also be represent, even if I'm putting the number 40 there, because there's 40 red, that can still be represented as a percentage of 87, which would, be like 44% or 46%. Sometimes just I don't have the math at the top of my head, but something around there. So you get to have that type of flexibility with this. So in a lot of these cases, the visual only has to be close in order to do, something that is visually informationally communicative. When you show it, people get the sense because it's really a sense of scale and relative scale when you're dealing with multiple things. So you're not that limited even with the sort of 0 to 100 model. Uh, so let's see. So is there a way to create a title? I mean, because let me just battle for to say, is there a way to create a title with the option of selecting a video as the source instead of an image? Absolutely. So let me let for giggles, let me just show what I could do here. So I'm going to go back into vMix over here, and I'm just going to change the red bar. Let me see. Let me add a camera in here. So I'll grab one of my cameras over here as an input. So give me a second as I do this. We'll do this live together. So let's see. I'm going to grab camera 2 over here, and we'll put this in. Now, if I came over here, camera 2 is 21. So if I come over here, which is the bar we were using, the red bar, and say, let me just change this, and I'm going to make it, going to change it to, just do the camera, just capture it here, and I'll close it over there. I'm going to change it to this camera here. So, okay, so camera 2, put that in there. So now, a little hard to see. I don't know if you can catch this, but this piece that I have here is trying to move my hands to see if I could get in the shot. But this piece now is just the video that's coming in, and so that's okay. So put this up over here, and we'll sort of cut to this. So turn the overlay off. So you can see here, this is just the graphic that I have here. So where's commercial? I'm just trying to see where this is and if I can. Yeah, so you can see my arm sort of moving in there now. So so this would work equally well with a video. And what I have here is because I changed the sizing and the scope. If you wanted to do something with that maintained, you know, aspect ratio, you could do something there. But again, you could do this where that could have fancy churning things going on in the background and pick it up that way as well. So okay, so let's see. Let's switch back to here. Okay, so you're saying, let's see what else we have. So it's, is there a way to create a title without? Yes, okay, so we did that. So QStream TV was saying, I was late into the show. Sorry for that, but how would you grab like votes directly from viewers? Okay, we're actually going to do a show on this, but probably the most straightforward way to do that in given, not having to do anything special on the viewer side would be to have viewers type in a special hash code in a comment. So like in this case, they could type hash A or hash B, something like that in a comment. And then you could actually create a GT title designer that was tied to vMix Social, pull things out that are coming in, and anything that has that hash code with scripting, you could do all this. So we will be covering this. This is actually one of the shows we'd want to do, but that would be the most straightforward way to capture that. And we will be doing that on a future show. So so stay tuned for that. Uh, so let's see. So Battle for Freedom was saying in GT Title Designer. So in terms of capturing a source in GT Title Designer, I do not believe there's any way in Title Designer to put in a video image. That's not one of the things in there. So this would be limited to doing something where, like with masking, where you could put the image, the video image in the background and do a mask around that to cut out the part you wanted. But it wouldn't be something that I believe you can do in GT Title Designer, at least as the best of my knowledge. I don't want to say it in an absolute sense. There may be some clever way, and there are a lot of clever people out there that are using this stuff more than I am. But this would be probably the most straightforward way to do it. So let's see. So QStream TV is so yeah. I mean, we're glad that this idea could work for you, but very very. There's a lot of stuff we can do with this, and that was one of the things when I talked about there are other ways to have approached this in GT through and say I could do 100 little thin slice PNGs and just say, okay, wherever I am, I could go from 0 to 100 and just fill in that same little image if I structured my GT title that way. So there are different ways to do this. I mean, so something like that, you're not limited to sort of 10 layers now. I can have as many images in GT Title Designer as I'd like. And that means that I can also do things that have more flexibility, and again, it's everything is about how you want to, create something that is unique, has unique value to your productions. So it isn't so much about just sort of mirroring this, but much more about you have your client's colors on this, you have your own spin, imagery, other things that could work with this. And the same way I did the video. So, oh, okay, I am being told that it looks like we're having some internet issues on this side. So I apologize if we go off. We'll just call this a quick post show, and I apologize for that. But so John Drinkwater is commenting that the recording is breaking up. So apologies for that. Unfortunately, we have limited choice in internet here. But so if we're still on, and things are going okay. So I guess I apologize because I know Rudy has a question, so I will try to get to that. And John Drinkwater is commenting that it's the same points in both of them. So we will wrap this up. Thank you all for joining us, and sorry for the technical problems here at the end, but we'll see you next week. Take care.